Hi, and welcome to Mother's Quest, a podcast for moms like me ready to live our own truly epic life. I'm Julie Neal, a life and leadership coach, community builder, writer, and mom to two high-energy boys who challenge me to grow into my best self. I'll be right there. Where was I? In the months leading up to a big milestone birthday, I decided it was time to stop sidelining my dreams and realize that I'm the hero of my own journey. I knew I didn't want to do it alone, so I created this podcast to learn from other moms on their own quest, so their words of wisdom and lessons learned could help light the way for mine. I created this podcast for myself. Come along with me, and you'll find some treasures of your own. Hello, and welcome to episode number 22 of the Mother's Quest podcast. Before I tell you about our guest today and introduce this week's dedication, I want to make sure you know I've officially launched the Mother's Quest coaching programs. I'm really excited about a signature offering called an Epic Life Reflection and Strategy Session. If you've loved the interviews on the podcast and imagined what your own responses might be to my questions, this offering will give you that opportunity to go deep about the way the epic guideposts are showing up in your life. Explore what you want more or less of and commit to key action steps. We'll record our conversation for you to listen to again, and I'll follow up by email to provide accountability so you know you have a coach in your corner, paying attention and cheering you on. Visit the Work With Me page at mothersquest.com to sign up or schedule a free 30-minute discovery session to learn more. Also, I want to give you a reminder that this season I'll be releasing episodes every other week. And on the off week, there will be a Facebook Live with either a guest or myself in the Mother's Quest private Facebook group. As you'll learn as you listen to the episode, the opportunity for growth is to explore meditation. And I'm going to be on vacation next week, but I've invited a coach and friend of mine, another amazing mom, Carrie Azuma, to do a Facebook Live in the group. She'll be offering a special guided meditation and an opportunity for some questions and answers. So I hope that you'll join her, and there'll be some information in the show notes and the link to join that Facebook group if you're not yet a member. This week's dedication comes from a friend who I've known and admired for over a decade, Leanne Louie Badua.
I make this dedication at this moment in time when I've had several successful moments today of mom victories. Things have gone as I imagine. My kids are happy, they're fed, they're laughing, and they're content with their life. I didn't do this on my own. I owe it to 3 strong, determined female role models in my life. I was blessed to be raised by my mother and 2 paternal aunts who raised me like their own daughters. These 3 women sacrificed, fought, and paved the way for my choices, my education, and path into motherhood. They modeled and taught me values of generosity, unconditional love, determination, and family, and never gave up on me. I hope my daughter, son, nieces, nephews, and all who knew them realized their powerful and profound impact in our family and on our lives. I dedicate this podcast to them, my moms. Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne, for this lovely dedication for the amazing mother figures in your life who passed core values down to you that you bring to your children. Our guest on the podcast today also had powerful matriarchs in her life and brings attention to core values in her family, with her children, and in the many ventures she has founded. Kalika Yap is an entrepreneur, inventor, intentional mother, and business leader. She's been honored by the Anti-Defamation League, served as a panelist with Magic Johnson on an urban economic forum hosted by the Obama White House, and currently serves as the president of Entrepreneurs Organization known as EO in their Los Angeles chapter. Kalika comes from more humble beginnings. She came from a big family born in the Philippines in the time of martial law that then moved to a low-income community in Hawaii. Growing up, she had strong influences from her mother, who's a teacher, and her father, who's an entrepreneur. Along with her husband, she now imparts these family influences, or Ohana, and a focus on core values to her two daughters, 18 and 8 years old. She's currently starting a company with her daughters, prompted by a school project called Conscious Kids, a mindfulness resource for children. Believing that children have eyes all around and a unique perspective, she engages her daughters in defining the core values of their business and encourages them to explore their creativity. Her current mission through her branded commerce startup, Orange and Bergamot, is to help 1 million businesses succeed and in turn create 1 million jobs by developing amazing brands. She shares what helps her achieve ambitious goals like these while being present for her family, reaching out to others, being part of a tribe, being willing to ask for help, and developing keystone habits like meditation. Ultimately, she believes that the destination is the journey and that the purpose of her life is to find joy and happiness while serving others. We covered a lot of ground in this interview, and I felt like I filled my epic life toolkit with powerful strategies to focus on core values, develop keystone habits like meditation, and consciously choose a life of service. I left the conversation inspired by the power of women like Kalika to pursue our entrepreneurial dreams while being a powerful and intentional parent. I hope you find inspiration and a commitment to accept Kalika's invitation to grow through meditation as I did. I'm Julie Neal, and this is Mother's Quest. Kalika, thank you so much for coming on to the Mother's Quest podcast. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited to learn from you as well, Julie.
The way that we start every podcast interview is I like to learn a little bit about your childhood and your own connection with your mother. So tell me about where and how you grew up and the impact that your mother had in shaping who you are today.
Sure. So I was born in Quezon City, the Philippines, and we left the Philippines to move to Hawaii when I was 3 years old because of martial law. And I grew up with 5 kids. My mom was a mom to 5 kids, and she was an incredible mom. She was always very positive, and I always thought to myself that whenever she wakes up, it's like she's, singing in her heart. And we had a really more powerful relationship when she came to help me with my kids. Like, we grew much, much closer. As she took care of me, and I was able to take care of my kids, we established, I think, a greater bonds when I became a mom.
When you left the Philippines, where did you move to?
Hawaii, Honolulu, Hawaii.
And where did you fall in the list of 5 siblings?
I'm the second to the oldest girl.
There must have been a lot happening in that household.
Yeah, it was fun. We grew up quite well off in the Philippines, but when I went to Hawaii, we lived in a place called Kalihi, which is, sort of like the cradle of poverty. And so we lived in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment there, but we were happy. It was great growing up there.
What do you think it was about your mother and the way that she approached life that enabled her to have that kind of spirit that you described about, waking up with her heart singing? That's powerful imagery. What do you think shaped her?
She was a teacher, and my grandmother was also a teacher as well, too. And I think that teachers oftentimes, want to give back, and it gives so much of themselves. And in return, they also get lots in return. So I think that as she gave back to her family, she herself was also fulfilled. So, I always felt that she was a really powerful human being. And I didn't know how she accomplished everything, but I also had a lot of empathy for her. So I would be the one that was always constantly helping her as well. When she joined my dad in business, I was the one that would help pick up the pieces because I also had a lot of empathy for what she was doing for the family.
And you were one of the older ones, so you probably stepped into a caretaking role.
Yes.
Your children.
Yes. Yeah.
What kind of work did your father do?
He was a small business owner. He first started off, in the Philippines selling encyclopedias door to door and selling vacuum cleaners door to door. Then he ended up, getting a company called American Products, where he was importing China and selling it to hotels. Then had a plumbing company, and so became super successful that way.
Wow. Well, as we get into your story and journey, I'm sure that some of his entrepreneurial spirit has impacted you. You're an entrepreneur, you're an inventor, started so many businesses. And, from what I've learned from researching you, you're also an incredibly intentional mother and a leader. So I'm excited to delve into your life journey. So I was telling you before we pressed record that about a year ago, I decided that I am living what I call my epic life. And the truth is, I've been living an epic life, but I've become much more aware of the choices that I can make and aware of not wanting to hold myself back, realizing I've done a lot of reading about the hero's journey and realizing that I really am the hero of the journey that is my life, and that I don't want to have any regrets or feel like I had dreams or things that I wanted to do that I put aside for fear or because I felt like those things weren't possible while being a mom. So I'm really committed to this idea that as mothers, we could be present and mindful with our children, but we can also be living a life that has a lot of meaning and where we're making a difference beyond our family. And that in fact, when you do those two things, you become an even better mother and an even better, contributor. So this epic life connotes this whole idea of being the hero of our journey. It's also an acronym mnemonic for the guideposts that I believe help us to live that life when we're raising our children. And I want a chance, I'm going to ask you about each of these guideposts and how they show up for you in your life. The first one, E, stands for engaged, and that's about being engaged mindfully with our children. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your children and how you are intentional about how you are present and are in their lives.
Yeah, so my children, Malia and Kailani, Malia is 10 and Kailani is 8 years old. And since they were 3 years old, we've been talking about core values and what core values means to them. Some of the core values that we have are show love, show joy, make wise and conscious decisions, laugh. And the reason why I think core values are really important to establish when you're young, it gives you, like you were talking about, like these principles, these guideposts to be able to live your life. Another one of our core values is communicate kindly. And so whenever we're talking about, and I hear them fighting or, we'll go back to those core values, like, are you communicating kindly or is that communicating kindly? And they immediately know what it means to live within our values in the household.
I love that. And was there a process you went through to create or co-create these values with your children? Or was it something that you told them these are our values? What does that process look like?
Well, because we started, I started when they were young, it was something that how I thought that the family should be run. But I think, later on, you had mentioned earlier that my kids have their own little company. So they created their own core values based on what they feel, what their core values are. I really think that if you do have core values in your company, it's important to get buy-in from the whole team if you haven't created it already. Like for my company, such as our core values spell out the word charm, which is change the world, have heart, all in, be remarkable, and make lemonade out of lemons. And, that's what, I'm teaching them as they're developing their own business as well, too. But in the beginning, it was, me coming together with my husband and thinking like, what are the values we want to teach our kids? Show love, show joy, making them active, listen to your mom and dad, and make wise and conscious decisions. And I knew back then that they probably wouldn't understand what make wise and conscious decisions was. But later on, as they grew older, they'd be able to understand what that means, and what I tell them is some of the decisions that they make lead to natural consequences and just being really aware of what your choices are. And
that sounds amazing. And my wheels are already turning for me about how I might want to bring this, co-creating values more consciously into my relationship in my family and with my children. I would love to hear, I was so excited to read about this company that you're creating with your children, which is so powerful. And what an amazing way to be mindfully engaged with your kids. Could you tell me a little bit more about it and how it came to be?
Sure. So they go to this school called Seven Arrows Elementary, and part of their projects is to create an ethical leadership project. And as they were seeing other kids creating, their own products or, creating their own inventions, they came to me and wanted to create these mindfulness products for kids. The teachers teach them mindfulness practices, and they've been learning about mindfulness for several years right now. And so among their products include meditation pillows. We're working on a line of charms. They want to do something with lotions. They have a meditation tent that they want to create. And so, but it started off with a school project, and they know how much I'm also very much into mindfulness and meditation. So it was just a great coming together, when they wanted to do this project.
That sounds incredible. And is this a formal company? Is it incorporated?
Yes, it is. It was interesting when we were going through this whole LLC process. My daughter Malia said, "Mom, well, what is LLC?" I'm looking on the website and reading. This is when she was, I think, 8 or 9. And she said, "I don't understand what it means." And so I was explaining to her in layman's term, like what a limited liability company is and why you need to set it up so that you can protect your assets. And she said, "Why don't they just say that simply and clearly?" And I'm thinking, see, right? I mean, when you get a different perspective,
Right.
It doesn't have to be that complicated. Business doesn't have to be that complicated.
So fantastic. I was also telling you before we started that I come from 20 years working in youth development and education and community building. And the last 15 years, I've been connected to an organization in the East Bay called Alternatives in Action. And, the premise is the same about, young people have tremendous potential and perspective to make a difference in their community and to be leaders. And so the young people through that organization have been involved in creating all kinds of projects, from like a skate park to even being part of creating a charter high school. So I've seen the power of, both ways, how taking on real world projects can really be the best kind of education, but also how young people can make a difference. That we talk about young people are the future, but the truth is they're already capable when they're young of doing so many powerful things. So I'm so excited about what you're doing with your girls, and I will definitely be following along.
Yeah, and I think it's important to get a child's point of view. When we're using some mindfulness apps as we're meditating, they didn't like the adults teaching them, because they said, "Oh, it sounds boring. It sounds so depressing." And so one of the products that they want to also create is a mindfulness app for a kid, where it's a kid talking them through mindfulness. So, it makes sense, right? Like you have never thought that. So they're trying to come up with a script, and they also wanted to come up with a script where if you do a certain amount of meditations, then you open up another meditation where it becomes like a goofy or funny one, and then they start like creating these funny stories where it leads them down a path where the kids end up laughing, but it's their idea. And as an adult, you would have never thought that they want to unlock badges, or that they want something funny, or they want a story to be told. And it just comes out, from a child's perspective. I really believe that when you're a child, you have so many eyes around you. You have more than 2 eyes on your head and the back of your head, all over your body, because you're looking at life in a different perspective. A table isn't a table. A table is a fort, a table is a stand, a stage. Then as we grow older as an adult, all those eyes start falling off until we're left with 2, sometimes 1, sometimes with no eyes, so it's really important to get that perspective and keep that perspective as if you are a kid.
Is this launched yet, or what's the timeline, and how can we learn more about it?
So we have a placeholder website, consciouskidsco.com, and we have our mindfulness pillows. We're working on the samples right now. So we receive samples. We have a meditation tent that we have a prototype for. And we've worked through the logo. They've worked through their core values, but that's where we're at right now. We're building the products, and hopefully, and by the fall, we'll have an e-commerce store set up and, some products to sell, but primarily this company is for them to learn about business, to learn about being an entrepreneur. And I'm really so happy that I'm there to be able to guide them, because entrepreneurship is one of my favorite topics, And we have this thing called a weekly huggle, which is a huddle and a hug. So it's a hug and a huddle. So we have a weekly meeting where we hug first and then we huddle about our business.
I love that.
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest thing you've noticed has shifted for them through this process of creating this company?
I think that they're learning more about business, and they're also seeing where I could improve. Whenever we talk about things that are happening in the business, or they'll say like, Mom, I told you to fire that person. Like they're giving me advice now. So I think that they're very aware, when they come to the office, and they'll say like, oh, Mom, I want to end up working with you after college. But I encourage them and say like, you're going to have your own company yourself, so you don't have to work for Mom, and that's what I'm encouraging them to do, to pursue their own dreams and not having to pursue my dream. And yes, because they are capable of flying, on their own.
Such a gift. Well, this is a great segue to the next guidepost, which is P. It stands for passionate and purposeful.
Mm-hmm.
And this is about making a difference beyond your family. So tell me about the, big picture. I know you've done so many different things, but what do you really feel is your purpose, and what these days is the way that you're hoping to make the biggest impact?
Right. Well, I really believe in the economic empowerment of women, and that by helping women entrepreneurs, we can really create a more positive world. And I think that if you are an entrepreneur and you're empowered, you're the one that is willing to stay foolish. You're the one that's hungry. You're the one that has a vision. And those are the types of people that I want to support.
Great. And so what are the ways in which you're doing that today?
So I have a startup called Orange and Bergamot, and my goal is to help 1 million businesses succeed and in turn create 1 million jobs.
That's a huge goal. That's amazing. And what are the ways in which you're going to be able to do that?
So I really believe that a way that a company can succeed is by developing an amazing brand. I believe in branded commerce. So creating 1 million branded commerce companies will lead to 1 million successful businesses, which will in turn lead to 1 million jobs. And we create jobs, by also creating work orders for our potential graphic designers. So I'm building a brand squad to be able to do that. But you can see more of what we're doing at orangeandbergamot.com. But yeah, that's my latest startup.
I was reading that you're also involved in a leadership role in some organizations that are helping women to develop their entrepreneurial ventures. What are you involved in, and how have you found, what are you bringing from your life experience to those organizations?
So I'm the incoming president. I'm president-elect for the Entrepreneurs Organization in Los Angeles. EO is a global network of leading entrepreneurs, and they have core values like boldly go, thirst for learning, make a mark, cool, trust and respect. And what I believe that I'm going to bring in as president is, my theme is actually Ohana. And Ohana in Hawaiian means family. And it means, for me, it means bringing together everyone in a tribe that they belong. I think that one of the things that people really, really need to know is that they belong somewhere, and that everyone is valued and everyone is cared for. And a lot of times with entrepreneurs, they feel very, very isolated. They really feel that they have to solve the problems by themselves, being at the top of the so-called totem pole. But it's very, it's very lonely. And we all need a tribe to celebrate and support us, because it's hard. Entrepreneurship is not glamorous. It is very, very difficult. And I think that the more that we all stick together and we stay together as a tribe, we'll be really successful.
I value that so much too. And this is a little bit of a preview that, the C in EPIC stands for community. And so we'll talk some more about this when we get there. But before we move off of your passionate and purposeful work in the world, I'm wondering, from all of the things you've done, what are some of the biggest lessons learned you've had that I can take as I'm just starting on this entrepreneurial journey, and so many of the people listening are in a similar place?
I think that the one thing I would probably say is not to be afraid to ask questions or ask for help. I think one thing that women fail to do is to really just reach out. They feel like they need to do it by themselves. And I just think that the more that you are willing to ask for help, the more you'll be able to succeed.
Absolutely. That's also one of those places where I feel like as mothers, we can model such an important skill for our children about, being able to ask for help, that's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength.
Sure. Yeah. So I interviewed Marshall Goldsmith for our EO Wonder podcast, and he said that there are two things that women entrepreneurs have issues with. And Marshall Goldsmith is, the number one leadership thinker in the world. He wrote What Got Here Won't Get You There, Triggers, an incredible leadership business thinker. And he said that there are two things that women entrepreneurs have issues with. One, feeling guilty, and the second one is not willing to promote themselves. And so for my advice, just knowing that all women go through this because they feel bad about not being with their kids or, not giving enough of themselves is, to not feel guilty. You don't have to feel guilty because if you know why you're doing something, if you know who you are, what you're doing and why it matters, it'll make all the difference in proceeding and being willing to, share your light with the world.
That's so helpful for me right now because I struggle with both of those things. And definitely the promoting myself. For years, I was in the nonprofit world. And so I was always in service of other people's visions. And I believed in that work deeply. And so it didn't feel hard for me to put that work forward and invite people to be a part of it. But once you're creating something that's your own venture and you're so personally connected to it, that has felt more challenging for me.
Yeah, but I think that if you know why you're doing, like for me with citrus, I know now why I'm in business. It's not because we want to create a beautiful brand or a beautiful website or a beautiful e-commerce, experience for someone. It's because I want to be able to empower an entrepreneur to get there. And so when you know your why, even with your Mother's Quest podcast, your information is really touching a lot of people and moving them forward. And so I wouldn't worry about not wanting to promote yourself. And I think oftentimes too, people are creating value for everyone else, but they fail to create value for themselves. And I think that it's important for you to do both because that's how the universe works. It's a give and take community. It's a give and take universe. When you create value and not want to take, it's not natural, so being willing to give, but also being equally willing to receive as well too.
Ooh, that is so good. And,
Yeah.
And this reminder about the focusing on the why is also so helpful. Are you familiar with Simon Sinek and the TED Talk he did about that subject?
Absolutely. Start with the why, the golden circle, really impactful.
So helpful. We'll put a link in the show notes to that conversation, which is such a good reminder. Thank you for that. Well, the next guidepost is I, which stands for invested in yourself. This is a natural place to go next as well, because it sounds like you have really invested in yourself and your dreams in such a healthy way. What has been the key to you, and what are some of the ways that you invest in yourself and take care of yourself?
Well, I really believe in Keystone Habits, and Keystone Habits are habits that lead to other habits. And so most recently, I've been meditating twice a day, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the early afternoon and evening. And I made that a habit because if you are calm, if you can sleep, if you have clarity, it'll lead to better decision making and it will just put you in a better framework of mind. And so for me, I sort of saw the end goal and I was trying to figure out like, well, how can I get clarity? How can I feel sane? And it started off with really being the best person that you can be. And for me, that needed for me to find meditation as a practice.
I like this idea of a keystone habit. What are some of the other keystone habits that have been important for you?
Exercise is a keystone habit because with exercise, it gets the blood flowing and it leads to positive emotion. And when you have positive emotion, when you are leading into stress or getting in a stress situation, you are just a lot more positive. So exercise is another one. Sleep is another one. But I think that meditation actually leads to better sleep, which leads to better clarity. So those are great keystone habits. Another keystone habit I probably would say is declutter. Making sure that your space is open for your work. Because if you have too much clutter around, you really can't accomplish very much.
I always laugh because sometimes when I bring a guest on the podcast, they bring something to light that I then realize I have to go work on to improve my life. And what has been happening more and more is there's this like crazy synergy where I've already put into motion what I end up hearing my guests say I need to focus on. So on Sunday, I have this amazing woman in my life who is coming to help me declutter my home.
Wow.
And
That's amazing.
I know. Isn't that fascinating how those things work? It does make me feel like there's some power bigger that I can't quite describe that brings things together. But I'm really committed to, getting rid of some things. Like our garage is just full of toys we don't need and just things that are, you can feel it energetically cluttering our space.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you tells me I'm definitely on the right track. I was reading some articles about the importance in your life for reading books.
Mm-hmm.
And I love to read too. And I was hoping I could hear a little bit about how you build in time for that in the midst of your, all of the things you're doing. And what, if you had to pick one or two of the same way you have a Keystone habit, if there was a Keystone book that you felt was really pivotal, what would that be?
Well, I believe that I'm a lifelong learner. And, my mom was a teacher. My grandmother was a teacher. My grandfather was a principal of the school. And I just, came back from Boston, MIT. I'm taking an entrepreneur's master's program. And for me, like when I'm a student, I'm alive. I actually don't really make time. Books find me. And I'm just really obsessed with reading and learning and being a lifelong learner. I really love reading anything that I get my hands on. Usually it's related to business because I'm obsessed with entrepreneurship. I'm obsessed with business. And so two of the books that I read recently that has had a huge impact is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. I'm really fascinated by negotiation, and that book has really helped me with negotiation skills. Another book that I read recently, which is actually really new, is called Captivate by Vanessa Van Edwards, and it's the science of succeeding with people. Like I really love people, and I really love learning more about the personalities and just, seeing how, we can communicate better, with the human race, because we are all really fascinating and we all have different personalities, and it's really great to be able to learn about nonverbal communication and how that really can impact, how you act with someone else.
Well, that seems like a natural progression to the last guidepost, which is C, stands for connected to a strong support network so that you're in community on the journey. Tell me more about, it sounds like this is a really strong value of yours. How has that shown up for you in your life as a mother and in the work you do?
Well, I really believe that you really need to be careful of who you bring in your tribe, because I think there's that saying that you are the sum of the 5 people who you hang out with most, and I couldn't agree more. And so I spend most of my time with people who match and align with my core values and are also in this entrepreneurial journey, because entrepreneurs, I believe, are a different beast in itself. So I really gravitate to my groups like EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, or NABO, the National Association of Women Business Owners. Now, I'm speaking on a panel for the LA Business Journal Women's Summit. And so women entrepreneurs in general, just people who want to positively change the world, or people who I really want to be part of my community. And it's something that it's active, so I am the one that's taking the step towards that community. It's not like I'm just going to take any community that I just walk into. So I'm very careful, even with my kids, like who we hang out with, who we're constantly surrounded with, because I really believe that you are the sum of the people who are around you. Birds of a feather really do flock together.
And what have been some of the ways in which you build community? You mentioned earlier about how, within your business, you really build a family. As I'm trying to build a whole community around Mother's Quest of other women who are committed to being mindful mothers, but also making a difference. What are some things I can do to help to grow that community?
Well, in EO, we have this thing called Gestalt, where we just share from experience. And what I do is I have this separate group called Maven's Media Group. And we have these branding workshops, these social media workshops, where we teach creative women entrepreneurs how to build their brands. And so that's one way that we build community, by teaching. So that's something that you could do as well too. Maybe teaching people how to podcast, or teaching them the skills that you have and bringing them together. But if you are, around, you should come and join us for some of our podcasts, some of our workshops. They're based here in my office in Santa Monica.
Yeah, I'd love to. We'll connect our calendars, and I'd love to find a way. Actually, one of the things I'm going to be down for, which maybe you might be going to as well, or if not, you might be interested in, is podcast movement, which is happening in August in Anaheim. And it's just this incredible conference for podcasters.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to write that down.
I'm really looking forward to, speaking of community again, I was mentioning to you that I'm part of this Facebook group called She Podcasts. We'll put a link in the notes to that. Just being able to, when you start something new like podcasting, which I had no experience in whatsoever, realizing that you don't have to invent the wheel yourself and that you can reach out to and ask for help and guidance from other people who have been down the road before has been so helpful.
Yeah, I think that learning and being able to willingly ask questions like we were talking about earlier is really the key. And also knowing that people are willing and so available to help.
Definitely. Before we move off of this guidepost around being connected to support, I'd love to hear what you have learned about how to, balance is always a tricky word. I'm not sure that there is a true balance, but, how have you found this blend of being present for your children and doing the work you do? And what are the ways in which your own family and your partner and your husband are part of that blend?
I really believe that we're building a map, it's just, you can't really take your one day and say like, okay, this is the sum of who I am just by what I do in one day. Because there are days when all I do is spend time with my kids. And there's some days when all I do is spend time on my business. But if you look at your life as a whole map or as a whole journey and making sure that you have time, and not even just time, like physical time, but just real quality time, it'll make a really big difference. Because a lot of times people are like, oh, I didn't spend enough time with my kids today, but you spent 2 weeks with them. I spent 2 weeks with them in Hawaii, where we're spending all day together. I think at the end, it all balances out if you are really purposeful about it.
And what have you figured out works in terms of your partnership with your husband so that you're really both engaged and you don't feel like you're holding it alone in the way that sometimes mothers feel like they have to in the stereotypical sense?
Well, we've been really fortunate. My husband joined the companies 2 years ago. I think it was a little bit more difficult when he had a full-time job. He worked at Bloomberg for 23 years. And now that he's here, holding down the fort at Citrus and my other companies, I feel like I can spread my wings and do other bigger things as well too, and focus on the things that really, really matter and things that I'm really, really good at. So that has really helped, and if I'm here in town, we're bringing the kids to school, walking them in to school, physically walking them, not just like doing the drop off, but literally like parking the car, taking time to actually walk them in. And also, having some coffee together or being able to take a walk on the beach before work starts. But it's definitely something that you have to plan out, and know that it's important for you to be able to spend time with your husband, and let them know that they're part of this really great journey, which is, life.
The conscious planning of time and how you want, what you really want to fill your life with is something I've been thinking a lot about. I feel like I haven't been as ahead of the curve in the planning. In fact, so, last week's guest that I had on the podcast had given me this challenge about looking at my calendar and seeing where the difference was between my ideal week and then my real week. And what I noticed is that, I've already had set in motion appointments and all kinds of things that didn't match the ideal, but they were already on my calendar, so there's this way in which you have to get clear about how you want your life to be, but then you have to get ahead of the curve. So I've had an epiphany about that, about planning ahead for what you want.
Yeah. And I think for me, I've got a really great support team as well too. So my assistant knows, when she's creating my calendars, because I really leave it up to her. I basically had her align my calendar with my core values. So student and kids activities go in first. And second, it's family first, then business. And everything else sort of falls in between. And so that's how she prioritizes, and she knows that. And if I look at my calendar and I'll see where it needs to be adjusted. But now, after being with me for, 8, 9 years, like she's really gotten my calendar down packed. So the priorities are set, by my values.
So smart to do it that way. So now I've got this new layer to look at my calendar with of what's the ideal week, but then also doing a check with like, what's my why in terms of my life and my values, and how is it matching up?
Yeah, and also delegating as well, all the stuff that, can be done by someone else. I think that that's really key. Like with my calendar, like it takes a long time to schedule meetings. And I give her clear parameters and she knows exactly like what travel time is, if I can take a call while I'm traveling. And we've had constant communication on how to improve that. But my calendar is really based on my values. So,
yeah. And what I hear is that there's a lot of trust, to be able to do that, to hand over so much of that work and control. You have to feel like you do have trust in a solid relationship. And that comes back to, how consciously you build your community and your team.
Yes, I trust her implicitly. Yes. Yeah, she knows.
So before we move to inviting you to give me a challenge, I want to ask you one more question, which is I talk a lot about in my epic life that there are these epic snapshot moments where I feel like, oh my goodness, this is everything I've been working towards or wanting. And it's that feeling of kind of time slowing down a little bit and just like wanting to bottle up that experience because it's, all the things coming together that matter most. I'm curious if there's a recent epic snapshot moment that comes to mind for you in your life.
I really believe, they always say that the destination is really the journey. And I think that if I, died tomorrow, I can really say that I've lived without any type of regrets. There's lots of mistakes and lots of opportunities of growth in the past, but every single day, because I do know what my why is, and I know why I'm here, on this earth, is to make a really big difference. I believe that the purpose in life is to find joy and happiness, and how we find joy and happiness is by contributing and serving others. And I feel like every single day, that's what I do. And I don't know if there's one epic moment. I feel like I'm living a dream. Every single day, I feel like I'm getting back and living the life that I want. But mostly it's because I'm serving and because I'm contributing.
Yeah. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time together. And before we close with takeaways and acknowledgments, I want to give you the opportunity to invite me and anybody who's listening who decides that they would like to come on this as well, a challenge of some sort or an invitation to do something based on some of the things that have come up in this conversation that you think will help me live a more epic life.
I think the opportunities for growth rather than a challenge is really to, embrace meditation. And I think for me, when I took up Transcendental Meditation, TM, where they say, meditate twice a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, it really, I think, changed my life because it really made a big impact because I do it for, close to 40 minutes to an hour a day. It's made a really big difference. And that would be a great keystone habit that will lead to other habits. And that's what I would probably recommend because it has made a huge impact on me. And I wish, when I started, I started meditating, like what I don't know, was 20 years ago, but it wasn't an active daily thing. And if I had a chance to go back in time, that would be one habit that I wish I had embraced in my 20s.
Great. Well, I accept that. I have a morning practice that I do.
Good.
A few different things, and it's usually like 1 or 2 minutes of meditation.
Good.
So I commit to building on that, expanding that. Do you have any resources or tools that you recommend or like to help people delve more into meditation?
I like the Oprah and Deepak Chopra meditation app. I like the Calm meditation app. I've really encouraged getting a teacher in TM or Vedic meditation, or even going to a local meditation class so that you're surrounded by a group of people. So there's like Unplugged Meditation here, which is in Santa Monica, that I also am a member, and I'm also read books on meditation. So, I really tried to master meditation. And of course, it's hard to do, to quiet your mind, but with practice, I think it make a huge difference. And it has made a huge difference in my life. So that's all I'd like to share.
Great. So I'm going to commit to expanding my morning practice to include a full 5 minutes, I'm going to say, of meditation as a starting point. And then also I'm going to go explore in my community and find some workshop or class I can take for meditation. But
yeah, usually the local colleges, like I took a 6-week meditation course at UCLA as well. So that helped me as well on my journey.
Oh, great. Okay. I'm looking forward to researching that. And I like to be held accountable. So I will make sure that I circle back with you and let you know what I found, what class I'm taking, and how it went for me.
Oh, you're so good.
So it's time to close. And I want to start by just thanking you so much for this time with you. I learned there's so many gems. I'm so grateful this is recorded and I can go back and listen again. But the thread that I've caught weaving through so much of what you shared is just your tremendous commitment to values and how that shows up with, your family and, even, encouraging your girls as they're developing their company to have values, how you have these family meetings where you're talking about how the values are showing up, how you're bringing those values into your businesses and your ventures and the organizations in which you lead. This commitment to habits. I love this idea of Keystone Habits and how they can bring you more clarity in your life. And then just a commitment to service and contribution and doing that in community with a tribe that you consciously choose, again, based on shared values. So those are all things that I'm going to now carry with me in my Epic Life Toolkit from you.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I've learned also a lot from you. So thank you so much for doing this wonderful podcast. You're making a really big impact by what you're doing. And I congratulate you on your podcast and your success.
Thank you so much. What do you feel like has maybe come back to the surface for you into clarity from having this conversation together for yourself?
I think that, women are powerful and that women, when they put their mind to doing something, they're laser focused and they can get things done, and that we bring to the world such amazing qualities that we all need to really just be willing to share and be willing to shine our light.
Well, thank you again. I know this interview will shine a lot of light for the women who will be listening. So much appreciation for you.
Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you so much for coming along with me on this episode of the Mother's Quest podcast. I hope this conversation sparked something that will help you live your epic life. If you'd like to get show notes and learn more about how to join the Mother's Quest community, head over to mothersquest.com. And while you're there, I would love it if you would follow the prompts to subscribe, leave a review on iTunes, and help us spread the word. I want to end with some words to light the way on your quest. Seize the day, love your people, honor your gifts. Until next time.